welcome to the sound of Wayward Strand. This is the wonderful Maize Wallin, and I believe we're also going to be joined by Jason Bakker via video. He got COVID right before the conference. How much does that suck? He was supposed to be here in person, but that's all right. So, Maize is an audio specialist, and Jason is a developer, and they're going to be talking through the aesthetic choices in bringing the world of Wayward Strand to life.
Hello. Hopefully we get Jason's face enormously on the screen. There it is.
Hello. People hearing me?
Yay.
Yeah. Are you hearing me, Maize?
Yes.
Awesome. Hello, everybody.
Everyone say hi.
Oh, yep. I heard you.
So welcome to the sound of Wayward Strand. We do also have slides, which I think that you can't see. So I'll describe them to you. This slide has an introduction of Jason and I. So on one side, there's my picture. I won't do. My pronouns are they, them. My name's Maize Wallin. I live on Bunurong country to the east of Melbourne. I am Wayward Strand's composer, audio director, and VO technical director as well. And this is Jason.
Yeah, I'm Jason Bakker. My pronouns are he, him, and on Wayward Strand, I was co-writer and also did some programming, production, and scene direction. Just collaborated with Maize and a whole bunch of other awesome people to make a cool game.
Yeah, we all have so many hats that we've just started to introduce ourselves as one of the directors or a co-director of the game.
Totally.
Okay, so we wanted to talk about musical evolution. The game's been in development for almost 7 years, and through that, there were a few different iterations of what the soundtrack sounded like. We went from, for a lot of games, I have quite a methodical, formulaic approach, as a lot of composers would. If you're able to trigger this music back of house, that would be sick. We were going to share from my laptop, but it's not happening. So often as a composer, we have to complete a soundtrack in a few months or a few weeks or a day or something like that. And that can really lead to being quite methodical and formulaic and really just getting it out, nailing those cliches and just doing it. And for Wayward Strand, it was really, what we found was that approach wasn't working. And if they can make the music play by clicking on the little speaker icon next to the word guitar, that would be sick. Audio conferences was just like really, we don't do them. All right, cool.
I was thinking I could butt in a little bit and just talk a little bit about the really early days, because I think one thing that is really cool about Wayward Strand and the process of how we developed it was the fact that Maize was basically the third person on the project, and there's been 50 or whatever people on the project now, and in the very early days when we were talking with Maize, it was the conversation was around music and audio and whatever, but it was also just about the game in general. And I think Maize being the person behind the audio of Wayward Strand, but also somebody who contributes to Wayward Strand in so many different areas in like a really holistic way. That's, I think, a big reason why the the music and the audio generally is so cohesive within the game and like perfectly fits the experience, because there was that like holistic style of collaboration as opposed to kind of coming in like being 3/4 of the way through the game and being like, oh, that's right, we need some sound, we'll have to go find somebody or whatever. Yeah.
So what this track would have shown is that what was quite cool about having kind of concept music at the start, and a big part of my process is being like, okay, here's 3 minutes of audio. This is what the game would sound like for 3 minutes. So it's got sound effects and UI and Atmos and music as well. Is this version of the track was quite hospitally, and it is set in a hospital, but we found that it was too hospitally. That was like, oh, not quite the right tone. And, that was able to really work with visual concept as well and the story, and helping us to define that, okay, this is a hospital, but we've set on a tone of hospital that isn't quite MRI machines, yeah. And then this transition from piano guitar, that was really part of that methodical thing for me. So guitar is an instrument that I see as quite really cheesy, but we're all musicians here, so it's okay. As a real part of the extension of my heart, like as it's a kind of a second limb to me. And it was only through that instrument that I was able to really channel that emotional impact. And I've always felt like there's no such thing as writer's block. Just go for a walk, like get over it. And that works on most games, but for this one, actually having to engage with my emotions and channel them meant that sometimes I was like, oh, I'm going to be a bit of an artiste here, but it's just not flowing, and I'll pop over to technical sound design for a bit because the music's not coming out of me. And especially during the pandemic and a lot of numbing of emotions during that time, it was just interesting how it was like, yeah, right, this soundtrack is different to others that I've worked on. Yeah. And the team is so good. They all kind of gave space for one another. We all have these moments as well.
Yeah, like I guess that's even an interesting thing to talk about in terms of collaboration, that we can kind of like, because Maize was on the project right from the start, basically it meant that there was space for there to be like a focus on music for a while and then a focus on other elements. And I think that might have allowed Maize to have that space to like work through some of those like, you know, um, uh, like things around whether to use guitar or not, um, and also like how much kind of emotion to build into the tracks versus how much we were trying to like step back a little bit and let the player find their own kind of emotional space within the music and within each scene.
Yeah, we actually, because the game's been in development for so long, we did a
Yeah.
talk in 2016 or 17 in London about prescriptive and postscriptive music, which if
That's
you
right.
have a kind of a classical background, or you're in notation or something like that, the way that you can score something is you can be prescriptive, where you are writing a score for a musician to follow, or you can be postscriptive, where you are notating what a musician has done. So you might notate what the musician's solo was on that particular night in the club or something like that. And right at the start of the game, we were talking about being prescriptive or postscriptive with the music, and trying to, at what point can you be non-prescriptive enough for the player to fill in their own emotions. And that really aligned also with how Casey, the main protagonist, was written as well.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, this kind of balance of Casey being her own person, or the balance of like MMO Casey, where the only thing she says is like yes or no.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that kind of went back and forward, like, and over time we just found this like really nice balance where like so much of the music is like, to me it's quite emotive and like evocative, but it doesn't feel like and this is me kind of like outing myself as like obviously not an audio specialist, but you know, I guess I'm here representing the kind of person that an audio specialist would be working with on the team, somebody who's like clueless but creative in other areas or whatever. um, but like, yeah, going away from what like a lot of trailers and things do, where the music is trying to really define, this is what you're going, and the audio generally is trying to define, this is exactly how you're going to feel at this exact moment. um, we wanted to really avoid that. So I think, yeah, we kind of found this nice middle between something that isn't emotional at all. Like it is still emotional, but it doesn't kind of um, provide like, this is the exact emotional path that you're going to go on as you listen to this track.
If we could go to the next slide, my clicker is not working anymore. That would be awesome. But the next, yes, great. Jace touched on a really cool thing there where, you know, everyone in this room are really used to working with clients who don't know how to talk about audio and don't have technical expertise. But we also know that that doesn't matter. You know, when someone like that says, can I make your track more blue or whatever, we can laugh because that's funny. But we know as artists that there is shared dramaturgy language there, and that it's part of our job to figure out what blue means for both of us and have a shared vocabulary, you know? And we did that in a really kind of methodical way. So there was often times where I just post a bunch of tracks in Slack and be like, all right, this one I feel like matches Esther, but you know, what do you think? Or this one, the aims were this, but hasn't come out that way, it's come out this way. And you know, we have a lot of people in all of their different rooms at 6 different times of day, morning and afternoon, for the 3 days. And so there's a lot of little places where you can put a track, and we have done mapping of what each person is feeling throughout each time of day and what kind of key events affect different people in the game. And so, you know, Jason might say, day 3 or day 2 morning, the nurses are feeling pretty hectic. They receive a call from someone who is pretty on their case, and we need something a bit more upbeat and kind of, you know, signifying that they're being constantly interrupted or something like that. And you know, we'd keep an eye out for that track as it kind of came through the creative process. So that was really cool. And it being on Slack meant that we could have real team discussions around, I think it matches this, or I think it matches this, or I think we could take the melody from here. And I think when I talk to other composers, there's definitely a level of transparency in our process that not all processes have. And I think that, you know, it takes a level of confidence in yourself pretty much to be like, hey, yeah, you know, I'll open up Ableton and the whole team can edit this song together, you know? Yeah. That's nightmare fuel for a lot of people. But it's something that I've loved doing with Jason specifically and the rest of the team.
Yeah.
You know, Jason has always said, oh, just tell me to shut up or ignore me if I say something that's wrong. And it's fine. It's like, what if we tried this? And I'd be like, no.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
wrong. But it actually goes pretty far before that happens. I think, you know, because we work so closely, we're in sync most of the time.
Yeah, Yeah, I think like the organic process side of things is really something that I focus on a lot, and like the fact that you know you like it felt from my end that when you were creating the music for Wayward Strand, a lot of it was a little bit more like you were creating things that um, had the right vibe and feel for the game generally, and then we would go like, all right, well, yeah, here's a track and whose room does it fit and what time, and or how could we tweak it a little bit and then it would fit this particular
Mm.
room and time. And that's just feels just the polar opposite of what the process could have been, which could have been us going, we need tracks for this, so now pass it across to Maize creates all of those tracks, and it's like um like a checklist process.
Yeah, which we've
And
all
yeah,
definitely experienced. An audio person gets a list of assets, and then we finished we finished the list. Obviously, it's
yeah.
always incomplete,
Mm,
or there's been no system design on that list. They don't realize that audio takes a lot of system design as well. So yeah, I think
yeah,
it's quite a mature way of working as well.
yeah,
And
totally.
we were able to define what the sound of this world was through a whole lot of iteration, and then knowing that everything does fit in the world. It's just when and where was really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah. I think a really good example of how in sync Jason and I are is during the pandemic, we did a live stream of composition process
Oh yeah.
and made some music almost from scratch. Like I usually get a couple of melodic ideas or something. And, we all love ASIO drivers a lot in this room. Um, and at the end of this like 3-hour stream or something, Jason goes to me, "So can I listen to the track now?" Because all you had heard was like all of this like bit clock stuff, and you
Yeah,
didn't
yeah, it was.
even tell anyone.
Yeah, well, like whenever Maze was like playing it back, it was like the time was really stuttery and notes were missing. Like it was just, yeah, I was just hearing this like really weird stuttery feed. But yeah, I felt like we'd worked together enough and had this like organic process to where I kind of still knew, like I felt like I was on the emotional journey with Maze as they were making the changes to the song, and still somehow providing like feedback and thoughts that were
Yeah,
useful for
like
Maze to work with,
really
to like bounce
specific.
off
Like,
of.
what if you moved this clip to over there? Like, or what if you dropped it down a bit or something? And
Yeah.
there's, Jace also has a really sarcastic sense of humor, and it's yeah, is really good at lip reading as well. And then everyone, yeah, anyway, it's a recurrence in our
Yeah, maybe it's just an extension of that of that
lip reading, but for
process.
Ableton.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
it was like a whole afternoon. Like
Yeah.
it was a really long stream.
Had a bit of
Um,
a headache by the end of it.
let's see if this
Uh,
works again. No, oh, I can't tell now. Um, so for the soundscape design, we had that hospital demo track. It had, kind of beeping and things like that. We did a lot of research on what machinery was in hospitals at that point. What were the sounds? We learned, because the game was set in 1978. We learned that IV bags were glass, and that the encasing of syringes was that kind of brass metal kind of deal, which might conjure up images in your head now. There were um, arm pump things to check blood pressure around your arm.
yeah, that's right.
There was that kind of thing, and those were all sounds that contributed to this being too hospitally just a little too cold. And so we started to think about, all right, well, what sounds would be there? Probably the cricket. Like there'd be radio, there'd be there was a piano in the house as well, which was cool. And you know, in video games and in film and in everything, wherever you do sound design and Foley, you really have to balance this realism versus expressiveness. If we go to the next slide, I don't know if I'm asking you or me now. Yep. And, you know, at what point is it, I guess this is the audio and the rest of the game is the same. You know, we were having conversations around the realism of what hospitals are like and what elderly care is like, at the same time that we were talking about how much we wanted this game to feel hospitally, you know. We were having conversations around, all right, this is a pretty nice place to be an old person compared to now. Devon only serves soup, which is the same as now. In aged care. You know, there are people who aren't being visited enough, but the place looks homey, and people are allowed mostly to walk around and interact with the other people who they're living with, but they're allowed to have their belongings with them and things like that, which is becoming less and less in elderly care, and not in hospitals at all. I guess another thing that happened is, you know, Wayward Strand has a very large amount of dialogue. The VO supervisor, Tifa Newsom, who we've worked together on a couple of other games, with the amount of words, she said that it's the equivalent to 18 feature films. The script that we handed Casey, or Nancy, the actor for Casey, was 1,900 pages. We didn't bind them all. We bound the first day of the game, and then it was just hand her paper. Like, it's not sitting on the music stand anymore. Most characters, their scripts were between 300 and 800 pages, so a lot less. Being the protagonist, she is in most scenes. But even then, the actors who would come from theatre or TV would be like, oh, how long are we spending in the studio? Okay. But that meant that with dialogue being so constant in the game, everything had to work underneath that pretty consistently.
Yeah, I think that's such a big reason why the soundscape ended up being like fairly spare, or like there's quite a bit of space in the soundscape, so that even if there's like a quiet conversation that's kind of murmuring away off screen, you're still able to pick that up and like realize, oh, there's like a thing going on over there. And that's like like in terms of functionality, we spent a lot of time all together designing exactly how, like, if the player or Casey is like in each space or focused on each space, like how are they going to be hearing a conversation that's happening outside a room nearby? How about inside a room nearby? How about outside a room further away? Like there's kind of all of these custom states that conversations can be in relative to the player, that that means that the dialogue, whether it's like kind of in focus and very audible, or in a state that I think, Maize, you called it like a noise state.
Yeah, there's focus, nearby, noise, and then silent, inaudible.
And
it's a balance between what is realistic, that Casey should be able to hear if she's standing there. She should be able to hear all of these people, and then what the design intent is. And then what's enjoyable as well, because, you know, we do want, okay, it's a hospital that's alive for 3 days and everything's constantly happening around you, and the player can walk around and overhear things and want to go into a room because they're hearing something from there or something like that. But in real life, we block out most conversations happening around us. And they, while they're audible, we do make them noise, or while they're nearby, we do elect to focus on that conversation if we're trying to listen in to it. And so that kind of system design was something that has just gotten more and more complex, actually. I don't think there was ever a point where it got more simple.
Yeah, I don't think we really found solutions for some things, but we just kind of came to a good enough compromise that that it worked well enough. One of the things that I had always wanted in the game and still exists in the game, but in like a more kind of rare way, is at the front of the ship there's a space called the cafeteria, and especially on one of the days there's like 3 or 4 different conversations that can happen in that space at the one time. And I wanted the player to have that feeling that I have when you're like at a dinner party or whatever, and there are multiple conversations going on and you haven't decided yet which conversation to focus on. And so you've got both of the conversations in focus in your mind and you're picking up little bits of each one, but you can't actually track what's going on in each conversation. And that's just such a strange, funny thing that I wanted to be in there. And fortunately it is in the game, but we also have lots of ways for the player to then focus in on a particular conversation, and that will actually move the other conversations to nearby, so that it kind of mimics what happens in reality when you're in that situation.
So much fine tuning,
Exactly.
When we'd have play testers and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm in the cafeteria and there's just so many conversations happening at once and I don't know what to focus on." And we were like, yeah that's good. And then them being like, "No, I don't want this."
I need some way of actually hearing something within this 5-minute period.
And it's such a key thing with tools support and development. If you know me in the room, you know that I am obsessed with system design and I do a lot of technical audio and programming or middleware or anything like that. But there is still a point where you need a programmer to focus on you and give you those engine side tools that if I tried to program them, it would take me ages. And having them actually understand the rest of the systems in the game to be able to program tools for you, that's been a really consistent part of it. And the first of a 3-part series blog is on the Audio Kinetic website. If you want to hear more about the VO process and how that had a lot of custom tooling as well. But I don't know if Alison's around. I think she has a talk tomorrow. She did a whole lot of Foley for the game, and we had a heap of custom tooling in order to implement Foley as well, which I wanted to show you on my laptop. But you can come and talk to me afterward if you want to check it out. But that was kind of a really iterative process as well. Jason would have, okay, here's an idea of how this tool could work, and then Alison and I would have a whole heap of other assumptions of how it should work, and we go back and forth, and Jason realizes that we're using some weird workaround. Gets a taste of his own medicine.
There's weird bugs in it that I didn't realize if you did things in a specific order. Why doesn't everybody just do everything in the exact order that I always do it in?
Yeah. And Jason, as the scene director, also did that a lot, which when Russell and I, who had done all of this audio system work, Jace would be like, "What if the character went this way?" and just totally overrode all of that. So
Sorry,
it was
everybody.
really cool back and forth. But yeah, I think, in Australia, in audio, we're all used to being generalists, and often that means being quite technically competent. And this game was really one of those points where it was really good to be in engine and designing systems and implementing systems, and having that expertise was just awesome. And if anyone wants to talk to me about technical audio as well, in my other work, often I am just on technical audio or just on implementation. Yeah. It's them. No, it's not them. Would you be able to play the video that's on this slide? Yes, that's there. So this is our launch trailer for Wayward Strand, and it's trailer music, but it is much more similar to what the music ended up being like. And this trailer, as well as our previous teaser trailer that we did, we had everyone on the core team looking at my Ableton session and moving things around. And you're laughing, but it's really, really effective, And when you see, David Lynch working with Morricone in his office, and you're like, actually, it works. No, it's cool. It's because obviously up there with Morricone.
Yeah. I think it just requires like a trust with each other, and like a trust to be wrong as well, to be like, I think it should be this way, and then you hear it that way, and accepting like, oh no, yeah, that was bad, yep, you were right.
Yeah, or
yeah,
everyone on the team, we all do have our own disciplines, and whether it's Goldie on art, Jason on writing and programming and producing, and all of these different kinds of things, and we do get the last say. We do get to kind of pull back and be like, even though you think that works, I still don't think it works, or whatever. So yeah, there's that kind of trust there as well. That's all right. We can just figure it out later, or not play it, or you can look on YouTube, Wayward Strand launch trailer. But yeah, I think every now and then there'd be hang on, I've forgotten how to do something in Ableton or whatever, and I'd have to just get everyone to put themselves on mute for a second. Or when we were doing the trailer process and going back between different versions of it, I would put everyone on mute for a second, or they would put me on mute for a second, or whatever. And yeah, no, it was really good. And I think maybe people who work in film have had that co-editing process when you're in the final suite. But yeah, it's a really good process for us.
Yeah, it requires like a particular type of communication, or like I think you build that up over time, that kind of like constructive, like constructively kind of critical approach where there's no like negativity, and it's more focused on like trying to find in yourself what is causing a particular emotional reaction. Yeah.
In the latest trailer, there's a bit in the middle that's in 5/4, and that's not relevant to anyone. No one cares. And so I didn't feel the need to mention it to anyone. But little did I know, Jason's on a call going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a beat skipping, and I'm like, it's fine. Get over it. Stop listening so hard. And that was really interesting, because I had worked the team into this state of just deep listening, and then I had to try and get them back out again because they were listening too hard. And it's like, no one hears that. No one cares what time signature this is in.
yeah, exactly. It's that trust thing again, of like kind of realizing that like, oh yeah, I trust you that I am fixating on something that doesn't ultimately matter. And yeah, it's like, it's totally right. But that requires that dialogue, and that requires like the uncomfortability of really talking about things with other people and trying to get to the bottom of what's going on, and kind of existing within that uncomfortability and being okay with it, and being okay, we all still love each other. We're just trying to figure this thing out together. Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes across the entire game as well. We
Totally.
all have.
Yeah.
Okay, we are done.
Oh,
I'll
time.
just go to
Yes.
the next slide. Yeah. All of that goes over the entire game, and hopefully, what you get from this talk is that the sound of Wayward Strand has really come out of our relationships, and how we've just been able to work together really consistently. So feel free to ask me questions later and not now.